President Trump is back in Washington. He's looking to shake off a bad week marked by his comments on racial roles in Charlottesville. Wendy?
But it may take more time to turn the corner. Lawmakers in his own party are still speaking out against him, and a new poll doesn't look good for the president. Here's CBN's Jenna Browder in Washington.
President Trump is back in Washington, but after his response to the violence in Charlottesville, his support among lawmakers and the American people is taking a hit. In Boston this weekend, thousands gathered to denounce racism and bigotry, something many feel Trump hasn't done forcefully enough.
You look at both sides. I think there's blame on both sides.
It's going to be very difficult for this president to lead if, in fact, that moral authority remains compromised.
The only black Republican in the Senate called on Trump to sit down with people who have suffered from racism.
Without that personal connection to the painful past, it will be hard for him to regain that moral authority from my perspective.
We all have obligations as leaders to not put salt in the wound, to bring a decency and a respect to the table to say, look, we're going to call evil what it is.
House Democrats are calling for Trump to be censored or formally reprimanded. And Democratic Senator Cory Booker is taking another step, tweeting, "I will be introducing a bill to remove Confederate statues from the U.S. Capitol building." Trump is getting conflicting advice from his team, this according to his former chief strategist who was ousted on Friday. Steve Bannon told the Washington Post, quote, "No administration in history has been so divided among itself about the direction about where it should go." This comes as a new poll shows Trump's popularity going down in 3 states that helped propel him to victory. In Michigan, only 36% of registered voters say they approve of his performance. In Pennsylvania, just 35% approve. And in Wisconsin, that number has fallen to 34%.
It all happens right here.
Those close to Trump are coming to his defense and vouching for his character. On Friday, we sat down with Laura Trump, his daughter-in-law, for CBN's Faith Nation.
My father-in-law has been very clear that there's no room in this country for racism, for bigotry, for hatred like we saw in Charlottesville. If you talk to anyone who's known Donald Trump for a long time, they will tell you he doesn't have a racist bone in his body.
So what can Trump do to bring healing to this racial division? Will the firing of Bannon help? And what does this all ultimately mean for getting things done? Lawmakers and the American people are waiting to see. In Washington, Jenna Browder, CBN News.
Thanks, Jenna. Donald Trump is not a racist. The whole thing is blown up nonsense. It's the tempest in a teapot, and it will fade. He's got a major initiative talking about today, but when I had the joy of interviewing him, I said there's 2 things you can do. If you get tax cuts and you get reform of health care, you're golden. I mean, you can do anything you want to do. And until he does, it's going to be tough. So,
well, welcome back. A lot of us have been praying for you. As many of you know, Pat was thrown from your horse about a week ago. You've got quite a bandage there on your arm and seven or 8 broken ribs.
It's the worst accident I ever had in my life. And this horse went crazy. I mean, he literally went crazy. I was just chilling out with him. There he is. He's a beautiful animal. He's an Andalusian, and here he's doing a...
Did something spook him?
I don't know. They think maybe rabbits ran out in front of him. But look at him. He's a beautiful little horse. He's beautifully under control. And he went crazy. He shied, and then I lost the stirrup. And then he just galloped as fast as he could go. I was pulling him as hard as I could.
And he wouldn't stop.
He wouldn't stop, and he propelled me. And when I had 7 ribs broken, maybe 8. My whole rib cage, my spleen, I lost 30% of my spleen.
Wow.
I was bleeding. They had me in an operation for an hour and a half fixing the blood.
Oh, my.
My thumb snapped at the joint, and I've got a cast on this thing.
And so here you are, a week out, and you're back on TV.
I just want to let everyone know, your prayers are effective. And I'm a tough old man, and I'm not going to submit to anything. So I have a few broken ribs, and so
You are
I've
tough.
got a
You are the
bad sling.
definition of tough.
Well, tough I wanted to show.
No, I mean, what hurts the most? The broken ribs, the broken thumb? I mean,
The ribs hurt along the back because it's the whole rib cage. It was a collapse of the thing.
does it hurt when you breathe? Like,
Really, nothing hurts. I'm in pretty good shape. I've got an incredible pain threshold, and really,
wow. And how long did the doctor say you'll be on the mend?
a couple of months.
A couple of months.
But it's fatiguing. It's unbelievable. But they put this cast on here because I've got a couple of wires going to that thumb. It was just snapped
Right.
at the joint, and these little wires are in there holding the thumb up.
Literally holding it together. Well, you can see how, your whole hand is bruised.
It's
When you were thrown, I mean, and you lost the one stirrup, did you just like fly, or did you just hit the ground?
I was pulling him, and then beyond that, he lost consciousness exactly what happened, because I think he hit some kind of a bank and I went off, and I just wasn't sure what happened.
Did you go unconscious?
No, I didn't.
No,
but,
so you felt it.
I woke up. I'm sitting in the dirt, and I said, "Hey, you don't need to take me anywhere." They said, "Well, you got to go to the hospital." I said, "No, I got to go to the hospital." But apparently, my spleen was bleeding. If they hadn't fixed it, I was under surgery for an hour and a half in the hospital on that one. Then for another hour or so on this thumb.
Wow. Well, we are so glad that you're.
Well,
I mean, you look perfect. I mean, nobody would know there was broken ribs under that jacket, except for your bandage on your arm there.
One thing I've learned how to do is to fake it if you think you hurt it. You grit it up and keep going.
Well, I'm sure people are wondering, will you get back on your horse?
Oh, yes. I've ridden for, 70-some years. And this was a beautiful horse. He's trained at Prix St. George, and I don't understand what in the world was wrong with him. I've done all kinds of beautiful moves with him. The day before, I was doing piaffe and passage and all those those high-level moves with him. And I was just taking a relaxing ride, and I just can't understand what spooked him. It's almost like the devil was after him, and he just was wild. He was absolutely wild.
It literally, that sounds pretty terrifying.
Well, it is terrifying. I mean, you're pulling him in it, and all of a sudden, anyhow, those things happen. But
well, praise the Lord.
I'm busted up, but I'm broken, but not unbowed. Okay.
Well, we are thrilled that you're back.
All right. Well, in other news, there's been another tragedy at sea from the U.S. Navy. You wonder, can't those guys get their act together? John Jessup has this.
Thanks, Pat. And as Wendy just said, we're all thrilled to have you back. A search and rescue mission is underway for 10 missing U.S. sailors after a Navy-guided missile destroyer collided with a merchant ship. As you can see here, a gaping hole was left on the rear side of the USS John McCain. The impact caused significant damage to the hull and flooded nearby compartments. The incident happened in Malaysian waters. This is the second collision involving a Navy ship in the Pacific region in as many months. 7 sailors died in June when the USS Fitzgerald and a container ship crashed near Japan. Well, in France, 1 person is dead and another injured after a van rammed into 2 different bus stops. Police captured the driver, who hit different areas of the port city of Marseille. It comes on the heels of that horrific terrorist attack in Spain. Authorities have confirmed the identity of that deadly van attack that killed 15 people in Barcelona. 22-year-old Younes Abi Yacoub, a native Moroccan. Police have launched a manhunt for him, and their investigation reveals the Spain attacks could have been much worse. Police found 100 gas tanks at a house used by the terrorists. Their plans for bombing were apparently thwarted when they blew up their own house. Well, President Trump is announcing a new strategy for the war in Afghanistan. It's his first order of business after finishing a 2-week working vacation. The president spent a full day last week finalizing a strategy shift with his national security team. Observers believe he plans to ramp up the U.S. commitment in Afghanistan. It comes as the Taliban has regrouped and as an affiliate of Islamic State gains a foothold in the country. For more on that and other stories, we go back to Pat.
Well, it's one of the longest wars we've ever been in. This thing in Afghanistan, it seems to go on forever. Alexander the Great stubbed his toe in Afghanistan. It was the death knell of the Soviet communism. And I was there on the border of Afghanistan watching the Soviets do what they did, and they lost it. And yet here we are once more going in deeper. And it's just one of the many serious national security issues that is facing our country. And Eric Rosales, our national security correspondent, has more about that.
Yeah, I tell you what, Pat, it is definitely a national security issue. You know, my sources are telling me that the president tonight will actually announce that some 4,000 additional troops might be heading on over there to the Afghan area. We're also going to be hearing that they're going to provide some sort of training along with some advising to the Afghan forces out there. Right now, the Afghan government only controls about half of the country, and that is actually less than what they controlled some 7 years ago. So this is definitely a war that continues, and the Islamic State has been hit hard, but you know, they continue to keep coming back, fighting and actually planning major attacks on U.S. forces there. The Afghan military commanders have said that they will continue to fight alongside and that they expect the United States to continue with their fight against the Islamic forces. Pat?
What do you think the president's going to say tonight when he talks to the nation? You know, I don't know how you sell that war anymore, but what's going to be his theme, do you think?
Well, I think the entire thing is going to center around his trust. He's going to be able to, he's going to say that he's been able to trust his generals that have surrounded him. If you look at his cabinet, you have, you have his National Security Advisor, McMaster, you have Secretary of Defense Mattis, you have his Chief of Staff, General Kelly. He surrounded himself with these generals, and he's also going to try and predict that and state that this is a much bigger war. This is a South Asia strategy that we're going to be taking. Pakistan, you know, is provided a safe haven for a lot of these Taliban troops, and he's going to say that he's going to probably put additional sanctions on them as well. You know, but that, in fact, will probably cause Pakistan to become closer with both China and Russia. You know, China officials have already said that they have a brotherhood made of iron that will not be able to be penetrated between Pakistan and Chinese forces.
Eric, they're bound to mean some other voices saying this is a bad move. Tell me about what you've heard.
Well, I've heard from congressional leaders on the Hill and also senators up on the Hill. Many of them are asking for additional debate on whether or not we should even continue this war in Afghanistan. Some are saying that we haven't had a debate on the issue for about 7 to 10 years, and this is something that should be debated in Congress. And you know, although the president has come up with a with his plan, his strategic plan, a number of people in both the Senate and Congress have basically said that they want to be able to talk about this issue and whether or not we should continue the funding for this war.
Well, you know, Afghanistan, their major export is heroin, and they have opium poppies, and we could have eliminated those opium poppies anytime we wanted to, but we said, no, we've got to leave that because that's their major cash crop. How can we fund the source of heroin that comes over here to this country?
I tell you what, I mean, that's one of the biggest issues right now that we're facing is the drug issue, and we're seeing it here in the United States of people dying all the time from opiates. And you know, we just have to continue. You wonder on whether or not should be continuing this war. So many people are saying, you know, let's just bring home our troops and let's start taking care of ourselves. But again, you know, you start thinking about all the soldiers and all of the military officers who actually have died out there on the war, in the Afghan war in the past 16, 17 years. It is just troubling. And the trillions of dollars that we spent on this war, Pat.
Well, one last question. The U.S. and South Korea are holding their annual military exercises. North Korea has said that this is provocation. It may lead to a larger war. What do you think?
Well, you know what, I tell you what, it's definitely escalating in that area. As of right now, North Korea just put out a warning this morning, and let me read it to you. It was put out in the newspaper. It says that if the United States continues with this, they're going to face uncontrollable nuclear retaliation war. And they also put a warning out, North Korea did, to Australia, saying that if, quote, it would be suicidal to conduct military drills with the United States. You know, Pentagon officials tell me that this is a 10-day exercise that has been planned every year. It's called the Oki Freedom Guardian exercise, and it simulates basically war games out there in the Pacific, and that they are going to continue with this exercise. They're going to scale it down just a bit, but they are going to continue this exercise despite the growing tensions with North Korea.
Well, thanks, Eric. Eric Gonzalez, our national security correspondent. And Wendy, we've got a big solar thing coming up.
This is a big day.
A big day.
A lot of people are going to be looking at the sky. Today's solar eclipse has people wondering if it's a sign from God. If so, it wouldn't be the first time.
Everything that happens in the world is for a meaning, and it's a message hidden in there somewhere, even in an astronomical phenomenon. So interpreting the message is, of course, a little more problematic.
See how some Christians are viewing this eclipse. That's next.